Hi everyone, it's Drake again. Today will be one of my, cover all bases videos. So going to talk about what I'm currently reading, what I'm currently working on, some new books I've bought, and go from there. All right, so let's see. All right, I'll start with, um, so I use Spotify for my music. And if you're familiar with Spotify, you might know that you get 15 hours of audiobook listening per month. And so I actually found out about this past spring break when I was sick for the entirety of the break for all 10 days. And I listened to Silent Spring? Yeah, Silent Spring. Or at least I finished listening to it because I started listening to it when I was on a long plane ride months ago, or months before that. And then I realized, well, when I'm driving or when I'm doing something that doesn't take mental energy, but I'm doing something, physically with my hands or whatever, audiobooks are really good, depending on the book. So, yeah, I try to do one relatively short audiobook a month and just have that kind of running in the background in addition to my reading. And the last two audiobooks, I finished one and I'm almost done with the other. So the first one was The Age of Revolution by Eric Hobsbawm. It's volume one in his 4-volume history of, basically the French Revolution to 1991, I believe. And I don't know, is he a Marxist historian or heavily inspired by Marxian theory in his history? But nonetheless, it's a refreshingly revisionist history of what he calls the dual revolutions of the French Revolution and then the British kind of financial industrial revolution. And yeah, it's really impressive. It pushes the boundaries of what makes sense to listen to in audio. I've always been a person who has an especially good memory with audio. In lectures and whatever, I pretty much remember what I need to remember. Pretty much most of what I hear, I'm able to remember. So I think that kind of audiobook listening is, necessary for a book like this Hobsbawm. It's pretty detail oriented. So I will be getting a copy at some point. I have a physical copy of volume 3. I believe that one's called Age of Empire. But so I finished that, and then I thought, okay, well, what would be a good follower to that? And turned out it's A Brief History of Neoliberalism by David Harvey, which I got like an hour from the end, and then I ran out of my 15 hours. So got to wait another week or so until I can finish that. But that one is more manageable to listen to. It's not filled with, tons of data and things really you'd want to reference. I think it is still a book I'll get a hold of, a copy, but it's not a super heavy listen, a brief history. And it is brief, I think. What is it, 9 hours of listening? So what would it be, maybe 4 or 5 hours of reading if you're reading at a pretty rapid pace. So those are two books. They go really well together. I've been thinking about them a lot as I've been reading. Very insightful. And especially what I appreciate is each of those books, they're in a conversation with each other, definitely, at least, kind of implicitly, if not explicitly. Although I can't remember, does Harvey mention Hobsbawm? Maybe. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me. But it's given me so many different ideas on branching off points for each. And so yeah, just excellent. Highly recommend both. In addition to that, I've been continuing reading my my book list that I've made, my personal library book list. And next on the list is this bad boy here, the Odyssey. So even up to this point, I've not read the Odyssey straight through in full. I've read extracts, mainly just to get a particular story or to understand a reference, of Ulysses by Joyce. But I loved the Iliad. The Iliad was one of the first works of literature in the first year or so of serious reading that I really loved. And right after reading that, I thought, oh, well, let's read the Odyssey. And for some reason, at the time, this was about 10 years ago, the Odyssey just didn't hit me at all like the Iliad did. I don't know what it was. I couldn't tell you at all what it was, but I am loving the Odyssey now. This edition, this Fagles edition, has a pretty substantial introduction by Bernard Knox. I think it's over 70 pages long. So I read that, and then I'm into book 4. So I'm just about done with the section that Telemachus is the protagonist. And then I'm about to get to the point where you get to Odysseus. So I'm super excited for that. I was reading this today. I got just a minor part-time job at a local used bookstore, and it was slow enough where I was able to read a little bit of the Odyssey, and I've really been loving it. I think the other thing that allows me to appreciate it even more is a kind of comparative reading of other epic myths from around the world. Include the Mahabharata and the Ramayana, and then I'll talk about another one that I have, the Poetic Edda, variety of myths, but Gilgamesh, this kind of thing. So, I'm just loving it. I'm loving it. Planning to be done with this in the next week or so. So, yeah, of course, Homer's really good. Let's see. Yeah, so another book I recently picked up, and partially through the impetus of someone in the Discord who joined, the Discord associated with this channel. And the book is Adonis, An Introduction to Arab Poetics. Now, this book is truly an introduction. It's very brief. It's 4 lectures that were given in French in the originally, I guess you'd say. In 1985, it was originally published. And then in 1990, it was translated and published by Saki Books. S-A-Q-I. I don't know if you can, barely. But, which is a fascinating publisher out of the UK of things related to Middle East and Islamic and Arabic culture. So I'd recommend checking them out. A lot of interesting stuff there. Edward Said on the front says, as important a cultural manifesto as any written today. And I wasn't anticipating it, but this went really well with David Harvey and his strong critique on neoliberalism. But what it also does is it gives you a history, a cultural history, a literary history as well, very brief, of pre-Islamic poetry, the mu'allaqat, especially. It gives you a description of how the Quran, being a written text as opposed to oral, changed drastically the scope of Arabic poetry or Arab poetics. But then also not a reaction necessarily, but then the flowering of Abu Nawas and Al-Mutanabi and Al-Mari and these other figures that came about in the preceding 300 to 400 years after the Quran was written down, and talks about the interplay between those. And then the final lecture that was just totally striking is Poetics and Modernity. And I felt that this book is the most interesting literary manifesto I've read that came after the modernist period. You know, way more interesting than anything in the English world. And Adonis is maybe my favorite living poet. I mean, I think he's in his 90s now. I think what would he be? 95? I think he's 95 years old, but he's still alive. Syrian poet who lives in France. But I do plan to go in this in more detail, so strongly recommended. And then another book I'm reading, well, reading in a way, more like working through, is this Introduction to Arabic Letters and Sounds. I just had my second tutoring session in Arabic. I've been working on it pretty assiduously. I was very lucky to find a tutor through UT Austin, a tutor who has a PhD in Arabic linguistics and was born and raised in Baghdad, and then came to the U.S. to get a PhD in Arabic linguistics. And we get along really well. I feel very fortunate that he's willing to tutor me. He's able to answer all my really ridiculous questions about historical phonology of the Arabic language, and how would Al-Mutanabi in the 900s pronounce his poetry, and he shared with me links of audios that I can listen to and so on. So I feel very fortunate with that. And then you can see maybe some of my work here. Let me get some work I'm proud of. Well, whatever. I don't know if I'm proud of this stuff necessarily, but I've been practicing writing pretty carefully here, and this is like calligraphic writing. There's Jeem, all sorts of stuff. So Arabic has just been a joy. I basically got into this because I made my book list, and I thought, okay, what are the major classical languages of the world? If you think about just the world as a whole, what are the major classical languages? English isn't a classical language yet, but I'm pretty sure in the future it will be. I feel lucky that I was born a native speaker of English. The other ones, though, obviously are, if you stay in Europe, you would include Latin and Greek, okay? Then if you move eastward, let's say, it would be Arabic, and then Sanskrit. And then you would have Chinese, I would say traditional Chinese, and Cantonese is more conservative in many ways than Mandarin. And then I would include Mayan. Mayan is a notable one. Those are the ones that huge amounts of people spoke or were the major node of a geographical region over thousands of years. There are other notable ones, such as Tamil is a major one. You would have something like Japanese, Korean, you could argue Egyptian, this kind of thing. Aramaic, although we don't really have a lot of resources there. Arguably Hebrew, although it was for a fairly narrow actual speaking group, but it became kind of a scholarly language. So, I reached out to tutors of Arabic, Sanskrit, and Chinese, and only the Arabic tutor responded, and I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled. I've been really enjoying it. I was talking with my tutor the other day, and learning a new language, we were talking to each other, is like diving into an ocean. And I don't like swimming, but I do love diving into the ocean of Arabic. I'm loving it. And in addition to some other things I'll show. So that's really my currently reading. Now, there are a couple books I will be reading very shortly. I'll start with one. One of them is this very handsome Library of America set of Richard Wilbur's translations of Molière, the great French playwright, who's almost exactly contemporary with John Milton. So a generation or two after Shakespeare, just to give you an idea. And about 3 generations after the Pleiades poets in France. So the reason I'm going to be reading this shortly is because I signed up for the Catherine Project. If you don't know the Catherine Project, it's affiliated with St. John's, at least loosely. It's basically a book club network where people get together and they decide on a great work and they read it together over a predetermined period of time. There are different sessions. We're currently in the summer session, as you'd imagine, and then there's a fall and a spring session. You have to sign up ahead of time and you basically apply for a spot. I don't know how strict they are with letting people in. I applied slightly after the deadline and I got one of my 3 choices. I signed up for Li Qingjiao, Molière's plays, and Introductory Sanskrit, and I got Molière's plays. And it was in that order. I did number 1, number 2, number 3. So I got my second choice. I'm thrilled. I've been meaning to read Molière for a long time, and this is an excellent impetus. There are about 20 people who are going to be in the reading group with me, and we're going to be reading 1 play a week starting July 7th. So just a handful of days away after this video gets put out. Yeah, I would recommend checking it out. If you like my channel, without having done it yet, I would imagine you'd at least be interested in the Catherine Project. One of the things that does give me issues is that you're not supposed to talk about historical context when you read the books, because the other readers might not know history, I guess is the idea, and you're not supposed to be an expert. We're all equal and we're all just relying strictly on the text. I couldn't disagree more with that line of thinking, but I'll see how strict it is. I'll see how strict it is. And if it's too strict, I just won't do it anymore, but we'll see. I'm open-minded. I think I'll like it. I mean, I signed up for it and I'm excited for it. I have the book and I'm going to be reading the plays, so we'll see. We'll see. I think it'll be good. I've been meaning to do something like that in person for a while, but at least digitally I can do that. So Molière. We'll be starting with The Misanthrope, which I'm thrilled with. All right, what else? This is another book I might be reading soon. Very thoughtfully placed bookmark. I bought this from Alienated Majesty. This is published by Eris Publishing. It's a world fiction imprint, I guess you'd say. And this is a Syrian novel, contemporary Syrian novel by Muhammad Kamil al-Khatib. Just Like a River is the translation. And I'll just read a little bit of the back blurb. Thought by many Syrians to be the most influential novel of its time, this first novel of Muhammad Kamil al-Khatib is a riveting examination of Syrian political and social life during the 1980s. With a multi-voiced narration carried like a river from one voice to another, al-Khatib paints concise, vivid portraits of a disparate group of people in Damascus, ranging from an older officer in the Syrian army to a university student coming to terms with her sexuality in a traditional context, to a British Orientalist on sabbatical, to a disillusioned activist who must reconcile his ideals with the realities of war and everyday life. So, yeah, sounds fascinating to me. And it fits in with my interest in the contemporary Middle East, but also just understanding, the dialect I'm learning of Arabic is, I mainly want to know classical Arabic, and modern standard Arabic is fairly close to classical Arabic. But for the spoken dialect, so that I can have a lot of input, I'm learning Levantine Arabic, which is the Arabic that's spoken in Syria. So that's part of the reason why I want to read this, just so I can get a better idea of the location that I'm learning the dialect of, which also includes Palestine, Lebanon, and Jordan, I believe. And then Iraqi Arabic is fairly close, I've been told, to Levantine Arabic. You start to get different in Egypt and, really different when you go to Morocco. So anyway, thrilled with that. All right. So the last Arabic book, well, not really, but kind of, is a printed manuscript from the late 1800s, printed by Charles Lyell, 10 ancient Arabic poems. And this is a reprint from 1965, but the original edition was printed in Calcutta in 1894. And this is a commentary on 10 ancient Arabic poems, specifically the 7 Mu'allakat, and Imru al-Qais is the most famous and most important. I've heard it described as the most read, the most known and most read single Arabic poem. And the great thing about this book is that it is just in the original. I'll give you a taste of that there. I'm about halfway through the alphabet, learning how to recognize it, how to write it, and how to pronounce it. Arabic is interesting. It's a Semitic language, so vowels are not written as a default. They're not written. Like in Hebrew, this is the case as well. In modern times, and in the past too, but especially in modern times, you'll run across more texts, especially ones written for children or written for non-native speakers of Semitic languages that will have a totally vowelized script or printed text. So I'm working on that. By the end of July, I will have fully learned the alphabet. I've already memorized each letter, but I'll have learned how to recognize it depending on if it's at the beginning of a word, middle, or end of a word. I'll know how to pronounce it. At least I'll know how. I might not be able to do it, but we're working on that, and then I'll be able to write and read it. So that's obviously like the bare minimum to be able to really actually learn Arabic, start packing away vocabulary. And so long story short, that's the reason why I got this book, is because the text is large. This is a pretty big book. My head for scale, I always have to buy the largest hats. And so this will be perfect for, if you're familiar at all with Alexander Arguelles in my scriptorium when I'm copying Arabic text down, because the text is really nice and big on this one. All right, we'll continue the trend. My last Arabic themed book to show you guys, and I just can't tell you how lucky I feel with this book. So I ordered this one from Moe's, good old Moe's, like I talked about in my recent bookstore video, used as the thumbnail. I'd have to say my favorite bookstore anywhere on earth. Alienated Majesty comes a close second, but Moe's has just been solid for 10 years. For more people than me. But anyway, I ordered Travels in Arabia Deserta. Now another very large book. These are like textbook size. It's 1,300 pages of a travel log that was first published in 1888. The author is Charles Doty. It was then reprinted in the 1920s with the help of T.E. Lawrence. And the edition that I have specifically was, I believe, printed in the UK, but then bound in the United States by Random House and sold in the United States. There is a compact edition that's a single volume, but it's really thin, as they say, India paper. That's the technical term. And then there's a paperback reprint by Dover that you can get, but I think the compact volume runs $40 to $50. The 2-volume Dover is about $50 to $70. And then I was able to get this 2-volume one with the slipcase. The slipcase is very delicate, so I've put it to the side for a little over $100, which was a good deal. And so my thanks goes to Moe's for that. The thing that got me hooked this time, because I've learned about this book before, but it never totally struck me. The thing that struck me this time is, of course, the connection to the Arabian Peninsula. So Charles Doty traveled to the Arabian Peninsula in the 1870s, I believe. And I mean, that would just be fascinating to be able to do that. But he thought that the prose style of the Elizabethan period and the following Caroline period was the best that English ever was. So I heard this book described as, you know, a mixture of Thomas Browne and Robert Burton. I mean, come on. Come on. Say no more. Say no more. So I'm reading this now. Amazing. Amazing. All right. I have 2 more, and I'll keep that relatively quick. So I picked this one up today. This has been on my great books list for years. I mean, in my mental list for years, and in my actual written list for months, however long I've had it. The Tale of an Anklet, the Silapatikaram. So this is the great Tamil epic poem that would be comparable in stature to the Mahabharata or the Iliad. There are some notable differences though, and I'll go into detail into those in a later video. But yeah, this is an extremely important book. You know, if you're interested in world literature and you haven't heard of this yet and you haven't read it like me, you need to fix that. And that's how I think about it in my head. I need to fix my gap in knowledge. Because Tamil is an extremely important language. Dravidian languages are spoken by hundreds of millions of people. So more people speak Dravidian languages than German or you know, a handful of other European languages that are maybe more likely to be learned by Americans, which is my you know, what, 40% of my viewing audience are Americans. I've noticed that percentage has been dropping the more I talk about world literature. I don't know what's up with that, but anyway, check this one out by Columbia. And last but not least, I have a manual of painting from the late 1600s in China. And that is this book here. This is a Princeton Bollingen book. And this was originally published as the Tao of Painting. First appeared in 1679. And then this specifically is a facsimile reprint of an edition from Shanghai in the 1887 to 1888. So, yeah, just thrilled with this. And I'll give you a taste of what it looks like. So, looks like this. That's why it's so large, is that the facsimile's in the middle and then all the notes and explanations and translations are on the side. So, yeah, I mean, couldn't be more perfect. A manual of Chinese painting from that would be the early Qing dynasty. Amazing. Amazing. So, yeah, thrilled with my reading. I feel very lucky. Thrilled with the books I've gotten recently. Thank you to everyone who supports my Patreon. I'm extremely grateful. Also, consider, if you've watched this long in the video, joining the Discord. We have a lot of good people in there. We talk about books, we talk about movies, we share good music we like. I just recently found Hayden Pelago, maybe misremembering that, but kind of a John Fahey inspired guitarist. So just excellent. A good, very good community. A lot of good people in there. People from all over the world too. I'm very proud of that. All right, well, I think that's all there is to say. More videos coming up soon. Death is a gang boss.